Hey guys, I'm SaltEMike, and this is your week in review for December 23rd, 2019. And I just want to say thank you. Last week's video was the most viewed week in review that I think I've ever had. I don't know if it was the weird thumbnail or what, so just thanks for watching. If you're, returning back to your second week in review, thanks for stopping by. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff if you're new here, and let's get into the video. So starting out with the patch notes, we had quite a few patches this week. As far as PTU goes, we had 6 patches, patches L through S. S was actually after the live build to test another build to see if it was stable or not. And what we got from those, there weren't too many major updates. One was minor criminal actions on party members no longer cause fines or criminal ratings. So if you were maybe having a fight club with your friends, or even if you made a mistake and accidentally blew up your ship, you will not end up getting a criminal rating for killing your friends. It was a mistake. That was, it was bad enough as it was. So I think that's kind of a nice addition added to the game. Also, it was pushed, the PTU was pushed to all backers really early in the process. And yeah, that was pretty cool. I don't even think we had a wave 2. I think we just straight up open to everybody. Let's get some server-side OCS testing done. And with that result, we ended up with a live build, and it was pretty good. There's a lot of issues, a lot of bugs, but stability's good. So I think it's a good idea, instead of going over any live patch notes here, because we've gone over quite a bit during the PTU, and that basically covers everything in the live build. Let's go over the known issues and some workarounds for them. So to refuel, repair, or rearm your ship, it may not work on the landing pads, so the workaround is to hover over the pad, and then you should be able to, like, around 10 meters above. And also, this is not in the patch notes, but I heard this on my live stream, that if you land on an outpost landing pad on some of the moons, that they'll just work perfectly fine. So honestly, if CIG is looking to track down this bug, maybe they should go and see what's happening on those landing pads versus the others, and maybe they'll find some discrepancy there. If you're renting, there's some issues. So if you've already rented one ship and you try to rent a second one, there's some issues with that. So the only real workaround here is, if you are planning on renting a ship, make sure it's the one you want, because you may not be able to rent another. FPS weapons and hand tools may not fire. There's currently a few possible workarounds for this, but the main one that they mentioned in the patch notes is to switch weapons. So if you're using a hand mineable tool, which would be on the number 4, hit the number 1, bring out your pistol, and then switch back to the number 4. You also may drop or lose that gun, so you have to kind of keep an eye and make sure you didn't drop it. Elevators at Port Tressler and Port Erebus Harbor or Erebus Harbor may not show up when called. These are the outpost stations above both Microtech and Hurston, and basically the workaround here would be to go switch servers, because it's server dependent. So if the elevators are not working on one server, they may work on another. So if you're on a US server, switch to an Australian server, then travel to a location that isn't Port Tressler or Erebus, and then join your friends if you were playing on another server, rejoin their server and get back into the action. One issue that's showing up that actually isn't a bug is if you have really low starting money on your account. This is intentional, I guess. Maybe it has something to do with platform persistence or whatever. So some people are starting out with like no money or very little money, and this is not something to report to the support team, as it's known. It's maybe not a known issue, maybe it's not an issue, but this is what they're planning on doing for right now. And you may have to do a few missions to earn a few credits to start out. That's not the worst thing in the world. You get to play the game. This, in my opinion, has been a really monumental patch in terms of stability. I've had 0 client crashes related to anything other than voice over IP. I've had a few related to voice over IP, and the other ones were like when you left the game it crashed. Those don't really count. So if you avoid voice over IP, I've had 0 client crashes, which is pretty strong, and very, very good server stability in the most recent patch. I think the initial live patch had quite a few 30Ks, but since then has been really solid. Now, moving on to roadmap updates, there's a little bit of drama here. So salvage has been removed from the roadmap, and I really want to address this because I think the community is really up in arms about something that they really shouldn't be. This isn't weird. Things have been removed from the roadmap and put back on plenty of times. I know people want their gameplay. I want it just as bad as you do. I own a Reclaimer. I own a Vulture. I'm very excited about economic gameplay, and that includes salvaging. But let's talk about what salvaging was on the roadmap. If you haven't looked at the roadmap previously, what salvaging was just scraping a hull off, which is basically mining a ship. So you probably shoot a laser at it and it slowly dissipates and things end up in your ship. That's not really that exciting, and what I consider salvaging to be is like being a Jawa and stripping a ship of its components, not its hull, and like gathering aluminum and some metals into my ship's hold and then, you know, selling them somewhere. That's not exciting, that's not fun, that's not very Star Citizen. So what requires us to get there? It's physicalized components. They've been talking about it a lot recently. I've talked about it a lot on these weeks in review. So pushing it back is because they want it to be good. Mining came in and it was really fantastic. And if they're going to put salvaging in and have it be that lackluster, what's the point, right? So if there is this dependency, which is physicalized components, let's wait and see when physicalized components, which is also not on the roadmap because they don't know when it's going to be done, let's see when that comes in, and then let's bring in salvaging. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and I think we're going to be a lot happier for it. So calm down, all right? The Drake Vulture also obviously leaves with salvaging, as that's probably going to be the entry-level salvaging ship, and what, you know, kind of comes out when we have salvaging. So it makes sense to move on to other things until you plan on working salvaging in. The Crusader Starlifter is also off the roadmap. This one kind of makes me want to die a little bit inside, but it's pretty obvious that the Crusader Ares did really well, and my guess would be that the art team, as well as just the ship team in general, probably wants to grab at that low-hanging fruit, as it's a much smaller ship to bring in the Crusader style guide into the Star Citizen universe. I know a lot of people are probably going to say, but SaltEMike, the Star Runner is a small ship too. No, it's not. It's supposed to be a Constellation rival. That's a pretty big ship to start style guide out in. So my expectations is the Crusader Ares is probably going to be fast-tracked, and we're going to see a very minor style guide of what Crusader will bring, and then we'll see something like the Starlifter and then the Crusader Hercules or whatever they decide to be second come online after using that initial style guide. So nothing really crazy or mind-blowing here, but definitely disappointing. So video updates. This week we had what would have been an extra video if we had a Star Citizen Live, but we did not. We had a Pillar Talk. So that kind of replaced Star Citizen Live, and honestly, I prefer that anyway. And this Pillar Talk, I thought, talked quite a bit about pillars. I saw a lot of comments about them. It was more of a 3.8 update video, but I thought they talked quite a bit about pillars, and I'm going to be talking about it today. So the first pillar that they talked about, and they really feel that Planetech V4 is a pillar, and I think once seeing what Planetech V4 brings and how quickly they were able to bring the new planets online, that it absolutely is a pillar in scaling the universe. So they really are hammering home that it took 2 months for them to make these, and that their tool set is much stronger now. So let's hear what they have to say about that.
Not only that, the tool set for it we have is far, far more powerful and actually artist-friendly and quick to use. So
yeah, I mean, it's an exciting thing for the artists. Like to give you an example, is that that making this transition, any technological transition that we make within the game, we usually have to backtrack over a bunch of old content that we've had in place, and it's not so old, but we have planets, we have moons. So when you're changing underlying technology like that, you got to be able to make those updates. But of course, we can't spend the 6 months that we would have taken to make Daymar in the past, and we were able to within about 2 months or so. And speaking on Marco's behalf, maybe a little bit here, within about two months, and everybody there,
Michelle Cooper, all those guys,
we were able to apply those updates across all the planets.
Well, it's not just update. They started from. It's basically started from scratch on rebuilding the planets,
right?
And they rebuilt all our current planets and did microtech and did all the moons in 2 months. And that's work that we've been working on for the past 2 years previously.
Now, I'm going to be a little salty here, I guess, or skeptical, but if it took them 2 months to make all the planets and moons, why don't we have the new microtech moons? So I don't really think they built them completely from scratch. There must have been something there, and their tools allowed them to do it quicker, because if that was the case, we would have had the Microtech moons being completed during the PTU most likely. So I don't understand really what they're trying to kind of put out there. It does seem a little marketing speaky to me, maybe. So yeah, I'm curious when we get the Microtech moons. Most likely it takes a little bit longer to build from actual scratch, so we'll see those in 3.9. Then they move on to server-side OCS, and we're going to talk quite a bit about that here on today's video. And Todd Pappy starts out the discussion basically with how the tech will benefit our NPC interactions.
So what do you see as gameplay benefits?
From my standpoint, the biggest one will be AI and kind of the way that the ships feel in combat as well as the FPS in combat. With our server frame rates, the way that they currently run, it's basically 7 to 10 frames. You know, when we get it running at 30 frames a second on the server, you'll see a major benefit.
So it's a lot less precise than what the client is, and so they get out of sync, and then you get weird behavior, a lag. And so if you get the server frame rate, which our target is 30 frames per second up, then the experience on the client side is better. And a lot of that weird AI behavior that people see, or doors not opening when they should open, isn't actually necessarily a bug. It's just that the server's gummed up or so far behind it, it's not telling the client in time to do stuff.
I've been mining a lot. I haven't done any missions or anything like that, so I'm going to kind of pose this question to you. Have you noticed any changes? The only thing I've seen is at like outposts and stations where NPCs are just standing on top of chairs, so I'm not seeing much of a change there. Is fighting like NPCs or AI in FPS any more enjoyable? Or is the dogfighting better? What's kind of going on with that? Let me know in the comments below. But again, I haven't seen too many exciting changes to that. And then we hear about how Tony feels the tech has impacted the game.
From my point of view, the biggest improvement on the SOC stuff is really going to be the fact that it's going to break us free from these limitations in terms of how many locations and how much content we can put into the solar system. So it's tangentially related to what Pappy is saying in regards to, he's talking about the frame rate side of it. The part that I'm saying is, well, now we can get all these new locations without impacting the frame rate at all, because the server that you're on is still only loading what's absolutely necessary for the players that are on your server. And so what this is going to allow us to do is put more outposts, more space stations, more derelict ships, more caves, all of this content that heretofore we've been so constrained. We've had to basically weigh everything from the point of view of, well, what is this going to do to server performance? Because we know every single server, regardless of whether there's a single player there, is going to have to load this.
So they simply couldn't put any more content in, and now we have an entirely new planet, new space stations. They talked about how they had very limited resources and how many caves they want to put in. I don't know how many more caves are in 3.8. Let me know if you guys have seen any differences there. But yeah, I think the idea and how important this is they want to make it so when you're around a planetary body, you have a ton of stuff to do. And they couldn't do that without this technology. So this is really monumental and really a big deal. I mean, the idea that quantum travel is an investment in your time of going from one place to another, then the time that I invest around a planetary body has to be worth it. And if they didn't have enough entities or things to do, we don't really have much of a game. So server-side OCS is in. It's definitely impacting the game for us now, but I expect to see those impacts become a lot more strong when we have server meshing as well, obviously. Now, logically, if you can increase the number of entities in a server, you should be able to increase the number of players, right? And Tony kind of gives us a little answer on that here.
Will this allow us to increase the player count in the short term? We have server OCS. Can we have more players? In one server, that is.
In theory, it definitely should. I think we're at the point now to where we haven't yet done sufficient testing that we would basically want to definitively say one way or the other. That's certainly what we're thinking we're going to want to be, we're certainly going to be doing tests and seeing how far we can push it. It is possible that as you completely remove one bottleneck, that you expose some other things that also need to be dealt with, and whether we'd be able to, whether those would be egregious enough in terms of a problem, or whether you'd be able to quickly patch them up and deal with them and push it out with 3.8 with a player count, or whether some of that stuff would have to move to 3.9. That part we don't yet know.
So they want to test and see what their limits are. That's totally understandable, and they're not comfortable giving any solid answer yet. They may have done some tests at this point, I don't know, but I expect them to do tests throughout 3.8, and I'm assuming we'll see some changes in 3.9. I think they kind of alluded to that in this video, as they made this video before 3.8 came out, and I guess my expectations are now to expect to see some changes in 3.9, but deal with the 50-player server for now in 3.8. Then the next thing that is, this tech doesn't just affect us, it also affects the dev team as well. And Sean Tracy elaborates a little bit more on that.
Because we deal with the tools and the developer tools on that side, I think the biggest difference for us will be some internal differences, the turnaround time for us to run. So, we're using so much RAM right now on the servers, so to be able to spin up the entire universe on a local dev box on just a normal kind of workstation was getting to the point that either one, it took a long time to get that thing loaded, because without server object container streaming, it didn't work like the client did, which was just loading what it needed. It was going to bring everything in. So that took some time. But then additionally, we're at a point that you would just run out of memory. You wouldn't be able to do it. So we even put developer tools in place to be able to exclude stuff from the universe. But that would mean that if you ever had to do testing on any of those ones you've excluded, you got to shut down, restart up. So basically, the developer workflow is going to be a lot better because the turnaround is going to be a lot quicker.
Now, personally, I hope to see a lot more happening in terms of development speed as well as stability in 3.9 and throughout the rest of next year, with the fact that they're able to do things quicker and more efficiently as far as dev goes. So that's really strong. And then the team talked about another pillar, persistence, and we finally touch on the subject, what the community's been waiting for, and see our hints at how big I think 3.8 will be.
The server-side OCS, we don't have the full universe persistence in, so we're going to have a more enhanced version of persistence in 3.8 than we previously had. So if you buy things or rent things or do stuff with in-game money that you've earned, and the in-game money you earn will have the ability to persist it between patches even from 3.8 onwards.
So we're not going to see full persistence, but we are likely to see a carryover of our efforts in 3.8 over through 3.9. So 3.9 comes out in March, and the next patch comes out in June. So there's a potential that the work that you're doing now in game will carry all the way through to June of next year. And that's really interesting. We're going to see how quickly we earn things, how quickly we get bored of earning certain things in the game, how efficient the prices are. I think things are way too cheap. A $100,000 Helix laser that allows you to make hundreds of thousands of credits is, I think that's too cheap personally. Don't nail me to a wall, but yeah, I find that to be maybe a little bit of a discounted price for what my expectations are longer term. And that's kind of it for the Pillar Talk. There was quite a bit of stuff there, so I will, as always, leave a link in the description. You really should watch the video yourself. Inside Star Citizen. The Argo Mole update was basically a big part of the show, and the first segment was on that, and they talked a lot about the art details initially, but the more important discussion, I think, is how the Mole separates itself from the Prospector.
It's the only multi-crew mining ship we've got at the moment. You can have 3 players in it mining at the same time, while the pilot also moves it around looking for things to mine. So it's very co-op focused compared to the Prospector, which is single player. So you can focus on a larger rock or a more dense rock that the Prospector can't normally mine with its single laser, or you can sweep a area for smaller resources at 3 times the speed of a Prospector by having all 3 of the excavators just buzz an area.
And then you all have the ability of tractoring that back into your ship.
Now, I'm not sure size 2 lasers really make a huge difference. I haven't seen them impacting things much. Cargo capacity certainly does, and the thing they touched on here was that 3 lasers mining different rocks will be a lot faster to be able to clean things out. Unfortunately, there's a bug in the game where you're not really capable of doing that. If one person's looking at one rock and I'm looking at another, our HUDs tend to change, and unfortunately you can, explode a rock and kill everybody. So until they get that bug fixed, it's really hard to test if that theory is actually true. My theory is that 3 or 4 Prospectors is on par, maybe even better than one Mole, but I think a Mole is a lot more fun, and we'll touch on that a little bit more when we talk about the Q&A for the Mole in just a little bit here. I want to take the time now, though, to really shout out the developer in that video, and his name is Adam Parker. He's the first developer that ever stopped by one of my live streams, and we've had a lot of good times over the years. He hasn't been around in quite a while because he was moving from a QA member who was stopping by the streams to help Q&A some bugs into a designer. And I think that this is the first ship he's designing on his own, and it's awesome. I'm really proud of him. Like, we go way back, and it's really cool to see him move his way up in the company and doing something really great. And I can't imagine, from our interactions way back then, I bet he feels the same way, that he would have made my favorite ship in the game up to this point. So I'm really, really enjoying it, and just shout out to you, and I'm really proud of you, buddy. And the next thing they talk about here with Dan Truffin is actually mining in general, basically, and the new mining heads. But I did a video on that already, and I'll leave a link in the description as well as up at the top right corner here. So what I want to touch about his discussion more is on how they differentiated the rocks that you're breaking to make those new mining lasers relevant and your stock laser a little bit more difficult to use.
So for 3.8, we made a lot of changes to the asteroids. We kind of had to rework all of them, rebalance them. As soon as the resistance of the rock kind of increases about 15-20%, you'll need a better laser head to be able to handle that. So we basically broadened the entire spectrum of rocks. The idea is we are adding more gameplay and more possibilities. We're adding more challenges for the players who really want to do a lot of mining, and that is their specialization. We just want to add a lot of depth for them so they have cool gameplay.
Now, there's definitely a difference here and variations, but I don't think it really carried over how Dan intended, at least through this video. I think one solo prospector can easily mine most of the rocks they come across if they have the updated Helix laser, but stock laser, obviously not. And I also feel like when I'm mining in the Mole, that the crew that you're with aren't doing a lot. They don't have to do much. If they're using support lasers, it does lower the instability and resistance a bit, but it really is only useful if one person is mining the rock. So I also feel like just 2 people at a time can be really effective in a Mole, as well as, 1 or 2 prospectors as well, or excuse me, 2 prospectors or more as well, but you don't really need more than 2 people. So I feel like they haven't put significantly difficult rocks in the game yet. I think they wanted to maybe see how things would go and then go from there. And I expect, a 3.8x or a 3.9 to see more variants, more difficult rocks to mine, and more reasons to upgrade your ship as well as your mining lasers to see some differences there. So far, really awesome iteration. I'm looking forward to more iterations in the future. Now, moving on to the miscellaneous updates of the video. The first thing is the Argo Mole sale, and there's 3 versions of it. There is a Concierge Carbon skin, which is a Warbond sale, so you have to use new money into the game, so no store credit allowed, $275 for that. The Talus is a gray-skinned ship, also Warbond, and $275. And then the stock ship is a bright orange, and that's $275 Warbond, or if you decide to use store credit, it's $315. I personally like the orange skin. Which one do you guys want to choose? And let me know. If you purchased it, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you're planning on purchasing one. Let me know. And if you're not, which colors do you like the most? I personally like the orange industrial skin. I think it makes sense for the role that it plays. Then we had an Argo Mole Q&A. And the first question that they went into was splitting the profits. Can we do that? And they plan to add this as an in-game function later, but use beacons for now, basically. And you use an escort service beacon, set the amount you want to give to a friend, and then they accept. Once the money's transferred, you just cancel. It's pretty simple. I think they already basically have splitting in the game. It's just not super easy, and it's not automatic. Then, what makes the Mole better than 3 or 4 prospectors? They touch a lot on maintenance, and that's more of a long-term goal, I think. I don't think we really have enough maintenance and things like that in the game, because our components aren't really that easily swappable, repairable, all that stuff. So the Mole may win out in the long run, but as of 3.8, I don't think they really value the fact that 3 or 4 moles can cover a lot more ground than one ship. And when you're trying to make money mining, you're usually looking for valuable material. And if you're able to cover more ground, then you're able to find more valuable material. So what we've been doing when we play is 1 mole flies around, and then you have multiple prospectors spreading out, finding the valuable material, and then the moles come and eat it up, and then we split the profits. So it really is super useful. And yeah, I think that's really where the value is in multiple ships and multiple prospectors. Also, the prospector is and was sold as a really great atmospheric miner, right? It was meant to mine planets and moons, whereas the Orion is so big it's not able to do that. And the Mole kind of fits that role as well. At least in the initial 3.8 patch, it eats fuel. They did upgrade it in the most recent live patch to have 40% more fuel, and it's a lot more useful now. But in general, it's a fuel hog, and that kind of separates the Prospector a little bit from it as well. So Prospector miners out there, you don't need to buy a Mole. It is really awesome to play with your friends. That is the difference for me, at least in 3.8 and probably through 3.9 and beyond for quite a while. It's the teamwork that is what's fun, and that's what separates it. In the future, we'll really see what separates these two ships, but if you have some friends and they just have Prospectors, you don't need to buy the Mole. It's a lot of fun, and you can enjoy it just as well. The next question is refineries. Are they on the ship? And the answer is no. The refineries are definitely exclusive as of right now for the Orion, and then for the refinery stations and outposts that they're going to be putting in a future release. Does it filter the ore? This is a big question that a lot of us Prospector owners have been asking for a while and haven't really got any answers for. And guess what? We still don't get a solid answer here. This answer made absolutely no sense. They basically said it doesn't filter, but it does. So does it or doesn't it, dude? Like, what is happening here? So also, are you going to add filtering? Because this was a major selling piece to the Prospector, and I think a lot of people bought it for that reason, and not specifically for that reason, but that was definitely a selling point on the sale page. So I think it's just time that you address it. Is it in the plans or is it not? Just address it. No big deal if you plan on taking it out, but because specifically they've added a lot less inert material and a lot more material that you want to mine when you break down rocks. So it's basically filtering the ore now. Maybe that's what they mean by this this answer, but I'm not really sure. The next thing they talk about is the CitizenCon Goodies suit, and that is the environmental suit that was shown at CitizenCon as well as what we had in the PTU. So Tyler Witkin or Xylo makes a little forum post here to let us know that it will not be in 3.8 live, and they plan on bringing it into a 3.8x patch later on because further work needs to be completed on it, and it definitely did. It had a lot of issues, and they also plan on releasing it in multiple pieces. I'm not sure how that's going to work because we got it for CitizenCon, but I guess we may have to buy like the arms and the legs later on. Holiday contest. There's two contests for the holidays, a screenshot contest and a holiday card contest. They did both of these last year, I believe, and there's 3 ships up for grabs on each of those contests, so good luck, everybody. Then they also had a post that I'm calling the Making Credits post, I guess, where the team showed us all their metrics about what we earned in-game last year, so go check that out. It's really, really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And the one thing specifically about mining and the filtering is one of the most mined things in the entire year last year was inert material. So there's some issues there that need to be addressed with mining, right? Then finally, the big one, the one that we probably had the thumbnail for as well as the title, is that CIG released their financials for 2018. And the only graph that I think is really worth, or the one that you really want to see, and the one that I'm going to address in this video, is the net position graph, the cumulative net position graph. And basically it shows that they operated at a $7 million loss this year, and they only have about $7 million left in the bank, which is what a lot of people are going to address here. And I don't see this as big of an issue as a lot of people may be seeing it, because they're gearing up for Squadron 42, right? So they're putting a lot of money into the development of that, and it costs money to pay devs, right? But the big thing here is once Squadron 42 releases, is that amount of dev is not going to carry over, right? Those developers are either going to leave the company or be moved on to Squadron 42 development. So I think that the cost of development should go down once Squadron 42 is out, and then profits should go up because now you're releasing a game that doesn't require any development, right? The PU requires constant development. Squadron 42 is going to need, Q&A and bug fixing, but not like major development and feature additions like they're probably still doing now. So once Squadron 42 comes out, you're going to have people's eyes on the game, people buying the game, and all of that is money coming in with not a lot of money going out from the company. So I think it's a good investment, and we'll have to see. But I think the big thing here that we need to address on this is Star Citizen over the years has been sold on like two major things, right? Wild fantasies that either, is coming out of CIG about what the game's going to be like, and or more specifically, in our own heads, right? We listen to what they say and we create these wild fantasies about what this game's going to be in our head, and that's what sold the game up to this point, as well as the actual PU gameplay, which is selling the game a lot better these days than it was previously, right? So what happens when Squadron 42 drops? It's either a good game or it's not. If it's a good game, a lot of people are going to buy it, and this $7 million investment this year is worthwhile. If it's a bad game, then it's not. And time will only tell. Looking at these numbers now, I'm not sure if it makes a lot of sense. So, freaking out about it is one thing. The one thing you can look at is, hey, they have $6 million in the bank. 2019, they obviously spent a lot of money, and they address that in the paragraph kind of below where they say, well, this year was a record year, so we're doing really well. And I think the more telling numbers will be the 2019 and the 2020 numbers. And we'll have to see. So this is more of a time will tell thing for me, and I'm not really too concerned at the moment. Obviously, seeing $6.9 million left in the bank has raised my eyebrows a little bit, but I don't think anything to really freak out about just yet. And that will kind of do it with this week's video. If you made it this far, I actually had to do this video twice. The first video I recorded and I was completely muted. So leave a like on the video for having to do this twice. Leave a comment below on anything we discussed today, and make sure you hit the subscribe button for more weeks in review, and I will see you guys next week. Have a great holiday, everybody.